Hello everyone, it's a pleasure once again to welcome you all to this course on inferential discrete mathematics in the second semester of the BCA online program. In the previous classes we have completed the first unit under this course on logic. We have completed this portion already. Today we will start with the introduction to the second unit on functions and relations. In this unit, we will discuss the fundamental ideas behind a relation, how to represent a relation in three different forms, what are certain types of relations that we will discuss, what are closures of relations defined on sets, how are functions different from relations, some special functions which can be classified into the one-to-one and on-to type, and also we will have a look at the composition of functions and how to find the inverse of certain functions. Relations form the fundamental connection between sets. A good example of this could be found on your screen. You have a set of students whose register numbers are given, and you have another set of marks secured by these 7 students. Now they can be related. For every student we can assign 1 mark as a result of a test. For every element on this set of register numbers we can assign a mark which is on the set on the right. So this forms a relation between these two sets. We are forming a connection between two different sets when we assign these as pairs. We have these pairs here, we have to 75, to 65 and so on. So for every element on the left of this ordered pair we have assigned 1 element on the right of the ordered pair. The element on the left comes from the set of register numbers and the element on the right comes from the set of all marks scored. So these form an ordered pair which relates the set of all register numbers and the set of all marks scored. Another example could be a set of nodes. We can have an example like this. Here we see that the information on your screen shows that a node 1 transmits signals to 2 nodes 2 and 3 and receives signals from 4 nodes 2, 3, 4 and 5. Node 2 transmits signals to nodes 1, 3 and 5, receives signals from 1 and 3. The node 4 transmits signals to 1 and 3 and receives from none of them, and the node 5 transmits only to nodes 1 and 3 and receives only from node 2. In this case we are taking only a single set 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and we are determining how it is related with itself. A set of nodes may also be related to itself. So this is how this example tells you. So a relation can connect two different sets, as in the previous slide. It can relate a set of marks to a set of register numbers, or it can also relate a set to itself. These are some minor examples to help you get comfortable with the idea. The formal definition of course comes on the next screen. Let A and B denote two non-empty sets. A relation from A to B is a subset of A cross B. Now this A cross B is what you call as the Cartesian product. The Cartesian product of A cross B is going to represent all ordered pairs that are possible between A and B, such that the first element is picked up from set A and the second element is picked up from set B. Such a set is what you call as a Cartesian product, and the relation R is going to be defined as a subset of this large set. To give you a small example, let's consider a set A which has 5 elements 1 to 5. 5. Now if we list all ordered pairs possible on this set A, the result is what you see on your screen here. There are 25 ordered pairs possible, 1 1 1 2 through 1 5, 2 1 2 2 through 2 5, and so on and so forth, 5 1 5 2 through 5 5. So there are 25 ordered pairs possible on the set itself. Only these 25 are non-identical. Now if you repeat some of them, you will have more pairs also, but distinct pairs, you have only 25 distinct ordered pairs available. Now since this is the Cartesian product A cross A, any subset of this set is going to be called as a relation. You might have learned the concept of a subset in earlier classes in higher secondary level. A subset of a set is quite a comfortable idea. So we are relating to that concept here. A relation is a subset of a large set, and the large set is actually the Cartesian product of the two sets involved. However, in this example we have both the sets to be of the same kind. It's A and A. So the Cartesian product of A with A will have 25 ordered pairs as listed here, and as a relation we are looking at a subset of this superset. That's why I have given you an example here for R, and R is all ordered pairs of the form 1 2 1 3 2 1 2 3 2 5 3 1 3 2 4 1 4 3 5 1 5 3. I have picked 11 ordered pairs out of the 25 ordered pairs available. So R is definitely a subset of the large set called the Cartesian product, and therefore R is a relation on the set A. R is a relation on A because it needs to satisfy only one condition, namely that R is a subset of a larger set which we call as the Cartesian product. And what is the Cartesian product? You collect all ordered pairs possible and put them in a box. That box is figuratively what you call as a Cartesian product. So the fundamental idea has been established here. A relation is going to be a set, not just any set, it's going to be a subset. Now whenever I say subset, I also need to specify subset of what? Subset of what superset? And the superset involved here is the Cartesian product of A and A. So any such subset is going to be given the extra status as a relation. Now with that formal example, formal definition, let's go to the classifying of a relation. We are going to look at a few important types into which you can classify a relation, and the first of them is this. We call it as the reflexive relation. Let R be a relation defined on a non-empty set A, and this R is said to be a reflexive relation if the ordered pair A comma A is included in the relation for every element of the set A. So whenever there is an element A belonging to a set, we must also have we must also have the ordered pair A comma A included in the relation. If such an observation is possible, then the relation gets a status as a reflexive relation. We call it as a reflexive relation. Remember, this should happen for every element. Even if one element is excluded, it's no longer reflexive. The next type we'll look at is a symmetric relation. Now symmetric relation is going to be pair specific. Let's look at the formal definition. Let R be a relation defined on a set A which is non-empty, and R is said to be symmetric if the ordered pair BA is included whenever the ordered pair AB is present in the relation. So if one pair AB is already part of the relation, then its symmetric opposite, the symmetric pair BA, when you just flip the order in which you write them, that pair should also be necessarily included in the relation. Such a relation will get classified as a symmetric relation. There is a reason behind this specific name. We'll look at that shortly. Next one is a transitive relation. This is also pair specific. It goes on like this. A relation R defined on a non-empty set is said to be transitive if you have the ordered pair AC included whenever there are two pairs AB and BC which are part of the relation. So whenever you have these two pairs AB and BC, a third pair should also be necessarily included as part of the relation. And what is the third pair? It is not just any randomly selected pair, it's the pair AC. So it's pretty easy to remember this. Whenever there is an overlapping here, the second component of the first ordered pair and the first component of the second ordered pair do match, then the other components also form an ordered pair. If this relation is of this kind, then you will call it as a transitive relation. So the last major type that we'll discuss what is meant by an antisymmetric relation. The relation R on a set A such that if you have both pairs AB and BA, then you should have both to be the same. So if a pair and its symmetric pair are also present, then that should happen only when both elements are identical. Only if this condition is observed or satisfied, you will call the relation given as an antisymmetric relation. It is also easy to understand if I slightly rephrase the definition. If A and B are distinct, then your relation should not include both the pairs. Or in other words, both the pairs are included only if they are identical. So if such an observation is made, then your relation is called as an antisymmetric. It's not the opposite of symmetric. The opposite of symmetric is different. It's the antisymmetric. Antisymmetric allows symmetric pairs, but only when the elements are identical. A comma A is permitted. A comma A has itself as its symmetric opposite. The A comma A is symmetric to A comma A itself again. So they are permitted, but both AB and BA are not permitted because A and B are distinct. You will allow only one of them, a maximum of one of them as a part of the relation. You can't have both. You can't have both. Then not both are included in the relation, not both of them. That is why the second definition helps people understand it clearly. If A and B are distinct, then only one of the two ordered pairs is permitted. You can't have both. Such a relation which makes this observation is what you call as an antisymmetric relation. To help you understand better, let's have a look at a few examples and then also do a couple of exercises to make yourself familiar with this idea. On your screens, I have given you a set and I have defined a relation on it. A set containing 4 elements 0, 1, 2, 3 and I define an R1 which contains 4 ordered pairs. Now remember, we'll have to first believe that this is actually a relation. And how do you believe that? A relation is a subset. That's how we defined at the start. But subset of what? Subset of a large set. And what is a large set? It's the Cartesian product. The set here is the set containing elements 0 to 3. There are 4 elements, which means there are 16 ordered pairs possible. You can start with 0, 0, go on till 0, 3 and complete 3, 0 and go on till 3, 3. You will have a total of 16 ordered pairs, and any subset of this collection of 16 ordered pairs is what you will call a relation. Any subset, you can include any subset. Any of them will be called as a relation. Now we have one example. Now we will just count. We have 4 ordered pairs which are 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2 and 3, 3. Yes, this is of course a relation because it is part of a larger set called the Cartesian product. But can you call it something else also? It is a relation, but you will do well to observe that this is also reflexive. It is also reflexive. How do we say this is also reflexive? Because for every element you have the reflexive pair. 0 is paired up with 0, 1 is paired up with 1, 2 is paired up with 2, 3 is paired up with 3. You have all the reflexive pairs collected together and put into a box. That box is R1, and hence this box called R1, a relation, actually qualifies to be a reflexive relation. How about this? I've added a few more and I've deleted some more. The same set again, so 16 ordered pairs are possible, 0, 0, 2, 3, 3. There are 16 pairs which are possible. And look at R2 now. What can you call R2 as? Can R2 be called as a reflexive relation? Do you have reflexive pairs presented? Yes, we do have. We do have 0, 0, we do have 2, 2, we do have 3, 3. But you do well to know that we do not have 1, 1. So one of the 4 elements that are part of the set A has not been included as an ordered pair with itself. In other words, the pair 1, 1 is absent. It doesn't belong to this relation R2. And for that reason, you cannot call this relation as a reflexive. It is not reflexive. This is not a reflexive relation. It is a relation nonetheless because there are 16 ordered pairs available. You have selected 7 of them. That's okay. It's a subset of the larger set called the Cartesian product. It's still a relation, but not reflexive. But can we call it symmetric? Do you have the symmetric pair of every pair? For these 3, you don't have to worry about their symmetric opposites because they are themselves. But look at 0, 2. You have its symmetric pair 2, 0 available. Look at 2, 3. You have its symmetric pair 3, 2 also available. So whenever there is an AB, we also find a BA part of the relation. And therefore, this actually qualifies to be a symmetric relation. It is not reflexive, however. The symmetric nature is observed. Can you call it as a transitive relation? The last type. Can we call this as a transitive relation? You need the observation where AB and BC should imply the presence of AC. Do you have such an observation that you can make? If you can do it, then it gets called as a transitive relation. However, you will see that that's not the case here. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Why? You have the pairs 0, 2 and 2, 3. So you can do this mapping, but you don't have 0, 3 present. 0, 2 and 2, 3 are part of the relation R2, but 0, 3 doesn't belong to R2. And therefore, this is also not a transitive relation. Not a transitive R. But can we call it antisymmetric? That's the last type that we saw. Can we call it antisymmetric? No, we call a relation antisymmetric if there is some unique observation that is possible. What is the unique observation? If two elements A and B are distinct, then you can't have both pairs AB and BA part of the relation R. Not both. You don't see it here because 2 and 3 are distinct. The element 2 and the element 3 are distinct, but you have both of them present together. And therefore, this is also not anti-symmetric. It's only one of the four. It's not reflexive, not transitive, not anti-symmetric. It is just symmetric. Next example. Can you call this reflexive? Now most of you would have jumped at the answer. It is in fact reflexive. You have 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2 and 3, 3, and hence it is reflexive. Can we call it symmetric? Yes, because for 1, 2 and 2, 1 you have both of them present. It is in fact symmetric. Can we call this transitive? Can we call this transitive? It turns out that you can in fact call this transitive because when you have 1, 2 and 2, 1, then you must also have 1, 1, which is the case. You in fact have 1, 1, and you have 2, 1 and 1, 2, which means you must have 2, 1 and 1, 2. You must have 2, 2, which is also the case. You in fact have 2, 2. In all other cases, whenever you are able to pair up the pairs AB and BC, you are in fact provided with the existence of the other pair AC, and hence this is of course reflexive, also symmetric and transitive. This is reflexive as well as symmetric as well as transitive. Can you call it anti-symmetric? It turns out that you cannot call anti-symmetric because for two elements 1 and 2 which are distinct, you have both pairs present. So this is not anti-symmetric. It's only one of the other three. All of the other three, but not this. Look at R4 here. R4 has 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, alright. So it is reflexive. Can we call this symmetric? You cannot, because of course you can. It seems you can. How do you say you can? Yes, you have both 1, 3 and 3, 1 present. That's fine. You also have 2, 3 and 3, 2 present. Hence it is symmetric. Which means it is not anti-symmetric because when the elements are different, you have both pairs present. You cannot call this anti-symmetric. What is it? Transitive. I'll give you time. Just think about the transitive nature. It seems it is not transitive. And why is it? You have 1, 3, you have 3, 2, but you do not have 1, 2. You can pair up these two, which means 1, 2 should be present, but 1, 2 is not part of your relation R4. Therefore, this is not transitive. It's only the first two conditions that are satisfied. And how about this? Look at this set 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, 2, 2, 3. You have double 0, you have 1, you have 2, 2. You do not have 3, 3, therefore it is not reflexive. Can we call it symmetric? 0, 1 and 1, 0 are opposites. 0, 2 and 2, 0 are present. But 2, 3 doesn't have its pair, so it is not symmetric also. Can we call this transitive? We cannot call this transitive again because 1, 2 and 2, 3 are present. That doesn't mean that you have 1, 3. 1 2 and 2 3 belong to R5, but 1 3 doesn't belong to R5, so you reject that. It is not transitive. Can we call this antisymmetric? It is also not antisymmetric. It fails on all 4 counts. It's just a relation, nothing more. Because you have 0 1 and 1 0 for 2 distinct elements, both pairs present, and it doesn't fit into any of the 4 conditions. Each of them is not being followed. So this is since we have established a familiar ground with all these relations, we can discuss this other classification of relation into a special type. That's what we'll see next. A relation is called an equivalence relation if it is all of reflexive, symmetric and transitive. If all 3 first conditions are being observed, we'll call the relation as an equivalence relation. And we can see that the example on your screen is in fact an equivalence relation. You have 1 2 and 3. You have 1 1 1 2 1 3 3, which means it is reflexive. 1 2 2 1 make it a symmetric pair. 2 3 3 2 makes it a symmetric pair. 1 3 3 1 makes it a symmetric pair as well. And you also see that it is transitive. Whenever you have 1 2 and 2 3, you also have 1 3. And this is possible for every such combination. Such a relation is what you call as an equivalence relation. Of course, I have included all 9 pairs possible, therefore it has to be reflexive, symmetric and transitive, but the classification is such. If any relation is all of reflexive, symmetric and transitive, that gets a special status as being an equivalence relation. We'll discuss a couple of examples under this. We'll see whether these are equivalence relations. We'll just test the equivalence nature of them. We have done enough practice on whether they are reflexive, symmetric or transitive. So we'll just see if they are equivalents. Now this is just symmetric. You have 2 4 as well as 4 2. It is in fact symmetric. It is not antisymmetric. It is not reflexive either. Not reflexive because you don't find the pairs 2 2 and 4 4 part of the set. Therefore it is only symmetric. Only symmetric. Therefore it is not an equivalence relation. We need all 3 conditions to be met. We just have one of them met here, therefore it is not an equivalence relation. What about this? It's reflexive, first thing. It is trivially symmetric because 1 1 and 1 1 are present. It is trivially transitive, 1 1, 1 1 and 1 1 are also present. So this will trivially qualify to be an equivalence relation. Trivially. Look at this example. You have 2 2, 2 3, 2 4, 3 2, 3 3, 3 4. It's outright not reflexive because you don't have 2 2 as part of the relation. You don't have you don't have 4 4 part of the relation. Therefore, it's not reflexive, and hence therefore it is disqualified from being. This is also not an equivalence relation. One more. How about this? 1 1 is present, 2 2 is present, 3 3 is present, 4 4 is present. Therefore, it is, yes, of course, it is reflexive. Can we call it symmetric? Yeah, you have 1 2 2 1. That's the only pair that matters. It is therefore symmetric also. But can you call it transitive as well? Yes, it seems it can be, because you have 1 2 and 2 1, which should result in the pair 1 1 which is present. You have 2 1 and 1 2, which must result in the pair 2 2. You also have that present. So whenever you have AB and BC, you also have AC. Therefore, it is all of reflexive, symmetric and transitive, and therefore it is also an equivalence relation. All the three it is. How about this? It's pretty easy to eliminate this. This is not even reflexive. Not a reflexive relation, because all pairs are containing elements which are distinct. You don't have 1 1, you don't have 2 2, you don't have 3 3, you don't have 4 4. You don't even have to check about the other conditions. It's not reflexive, hence it is not an equivalence relation. Not an equivalence. Okay. Further, we'll understand how to represent these matrices. There are many types of representing matrices. We'll have a look at one of them. We'll look at how to represent a matrix, how to represent a relation in the form of a matrix. This is a formal definition. If R is a relation from the set containing elements A1 through Am to the set B1 through Bn, then any relation on R, first of all, will be a subset of the Cartesian product A cross B. And this relation can be represented by an m by n matrix, a matrix which will contain m rows and n columns, and each entry of this matrix will either be a 0 or a 1. It will be a 0 if the corresponding pair doesn't belong to R. It will be a 1 if the corresponding pair belongs to R. So this is how you can pictorially represent a relation in the form of a matrix. And representing a relation in the form of matrix has a lot of advantages. It is easy to perform operations on relations and calculate certain properties of relations if you can have them as a matrix. We will have a look at all of them. We will start with an example. Consider the set ABC. I am just defining a very simple relation containing only 3 pairs AA, BB and CC, and that is why you have this matrix. Since it is a set of 3 elements, there are in all 9 pairs possible: AA, AB, AC, BA, BB, BC, CA, CB and C. Totally 9 pairs which are possible, but since the example considered includes only 3 of them, there are only 3 ones in the matrix. The remaining are zeros. You don't have AB, you don't have AC, no BA, no BC, no CA, no CB. All of these are missing, and hence those entries are zeros. Now let's try and complete an exercise on representing them. We'll have the rows labeled. Since it is a relation on the set itself, you'll have 4 by 4. You'll have a 4 by 4 matrix. You'll have 16 elements, and we have a set here R1 which contains only 4 elements. So only 4 of them are ones and the others are zeros, and those 4 elements are 0 0. So this is a 1 1 1. So the second row, second column is a 1. A 2 2, third row, third column is a 1, and a 3 3, which means the fourth row, fourth column is a 1. The remaining are zeros. So only 4 of the entries are 1, all the remaining 12 entries are zeros, and this matrix can be used to represent this relation. I will call this as MR1. Look at this, same set but a different relation. So it's still a 4 by 4 matrix. Zero zero is 1, 2 2 is 1, 3 3 is 1, 0 2 is included, 0 2, 2 0 is also included, 2 3 is included, and so is 3 2. All other elements are zeros. So there are 7 elements in the relation, which means there are 7 ones in the matrix. We have the 7 ones. This represents the given relation R2. Let's do one more. Zero zero, 1 1, 2 2, 3 3, 1 2, 2 1. The rest are zeros. There is something interesting about this matrix. If you can recall, I told you there is a reason behind the name called as a symmetric relation. We'll see why that is. If you can follow, this relation R3 is in fact a symmetric relation, because for every pair 1 2 there is also a pair 2 1. The other pairs have the same elements paired up with each other, so you don't have to worry. But 1 2 and 2 1 are related, therefore this is actually a symmetric relation. And not just that, the matrix that you are considering is actually a symmetric matrix, which means the matrix is symmetric above the diagonal. Whatever you have on above the diagonal is also reflected below the diagonal. You would have learned this under properties of matrices, which you learned in the previous course called matrix calculus. The same is what I am trying to recall here. This matrix here is actually a symmetric matrix, because the entries are reflected. What entries are there above the diagonal are also there below the diagonal, and it's in a symmetric manner. You see, these two are same. One, two, and 2 1. These two are same. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'll just correct it. One, two, and 2 1 are same. Of course, you have to neglect the diagonal, because the diagonal cannot be reflected with anything else. The third row first entry and the first row third entry are same. The fourth row first entry and the first row fourth entry are same. The fourth row second entry and the second row fourth entry are same. The fourth row third entry and the third row fourth entry are same. So there is the symmetric nature available to be observed in the matrix that represents the relation, and therefore you call such relations as symmetric relations, because their corresponding matrices are in fact symmetric above the diagonal. You have the leading diagonal, and all entries above and below are symmetric. Okay, we'll discuss one more. 0 1 2 3, 0 1 2 3. You have 0 0, you have 1 1, you have 2 2, you also have 3 3, you have 3 1 this, you have 3 2 this, you have 2 3 this, you also have 1 3 this. There are 3 6 8 entries in the relation, the 8 ones in the matrix, and the remaining 8 entries are zeros, which means we have our matrix ready. This will give you a far more clear picture as to why this relation is called a symmetric relation. Look at the matrix. It's perfectly symmetric above the diagonal. That is the diagonal here. And look at the entries above and below the diagonal. They are symmetric, 0 with 0. First row second column, second row first column. Third row first column, first row third column. Fourth row first column, first row fourth column. Second row second column, third row second column, second row third column. Fourth row second column, second row fourth column. And fourth row third column, third row fourth column. All these are same, and hence this matrix is symmetric by nature, and the relation is symmetric by definition. One, two, three, 0, 1, 2 and 3, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. There are 3, 6, 9 pairs. We have given you 9 ones. The remaining 7 elements are zeros in the matrix, and this represents. This is not symmetric. You can see that the matrix is not symmetric here because you have the diagonal here. Forget the diagonal elements. Above and below there is no symmetric nature observed. There is a problem here. You have 2, 3, but you don't have 3, 2. They are not the same. They are not same. One of them is 0 and the other is 1. Hence this matrix is not symmetric and therefore the relation is not symmetric. So classifying a relation as a symmetric one is easier if you can just draw the corresponding matrix and observe the reflection above and below the diagonal. Looked at this. Okay. A few more exercises for you to get familiar with this idea of representing a relation through a matrix. Only 2, 4 and 4, 2 are present, all the rest are zeros. You will still see that this relation is symmetric because the corresponding matrix is symmetric. Everything above and below the matrix are equal. 4, 2, right? I made a mistake. I'll just change that. This is of course a symmetric matrix. This is only the diagonal, nothing else. And therefore, this relation is actually trivially symmetric because I told you this earlier also. This is trivially symmetric because the matrix involved is a symmetric matrix. You see that the properties here to observe. First row, second column and second row, first column are same. Third row, first column and first row, third column are same. Fourth row, first column and first row, fourth column are same. The rest is also observed. This is trivially symmetric. We saw why this happens. This is because of the nature of the matrix. The matrix happens to be symmetric and hence the relation is also symmetric. Even though you don't have two distinct elements 2, 3, 3, 2 both included in the matrix, you don't have this. They are not part of the relation. But still, all pairs are reflexive pairs, which means they will also turn out to be symmetric. These ordered pairs put inside this box called R2 will in fact represent a symmetric relation only because of the fact that the underlying matrix that represents the relation happens to be symmetric. Some more exercises for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4. That's all. Nothing else. You can try and comment on the symmetric nature just by looking at the matrix. That's the exact reason I have given you this example. You can comment on the symmetric nature only by looking at the matrix involved. Look at the diagonal. Is it symmetric above and below the diagonal? You have this observation, they are same. You have these two to be same, they are same. You have these two to be same, they are same. They are also equal. But where is the problem? These two are not same, these two are not same. Above and below the diagonal, you have symmetric nature observed, you don't have the symmetric nature observed, because the second row, fourth column, and the fourth row, second column are not the same. The third row, fourth column, and the fourth row, third column are not the same. The matrix is therefore not symmetric, and hence the relation therefore is also not symmetric. What about this? Let's try our luck with this. 1 1 is present, 1 2 is present, 2 1 is present, 2 2 is present, 3 3 is present, and 4 4 is present. All the rest are zeros. Let's see if we can classify this as a symmetric based on the matrix. Yes, you will observe the diagonal here. You will see that these two are observed, 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 these two. Yes, yes, yes. It of course happens to be a symmetric relation only because the underlying matrix that represents the relation is also symmetric. One last example for you. We'll go to the next concept shortly. 1 3 1 4, 2 3 2 4, 3 1 3 4. The other entries are zeros. The other entries are zeros. Now if you highlight the diagonal and look at the symmetric pairs, you have 0 0, you have 1 1, you don't have 1 1 here. The second row third column and the third row second column do not match. Hence the matrix is not symmetric, and therefore the relation is also not symmetric. With the classification, we are ready to move to the next concept. How you know the advanced level of a relation, we'll call it as a function. Now, a function is one other way to relate two sets. In fact, the very first example I gave you, where I compared one set of register numbers and the other set of marks code, is actually a function. How do I say that? The formal definition is on your screens. A function f from set A to set B is actually a relation. So it is first of all a relation. That's the basic condition to be satisfied. It's first of all a relation. And that relation becomes a function if every element in set A is related with one and only one element from set B. Every element should be related to one and only one element from set B. If this property is observed, you call the relation as a function. So you have already understood the basic notion of a relation. It's the subset of a Cartesian product. Now when does this subset get the extra status as a function? When this highlighted portion is being observed. And if you have f of A as B, if B is the unique element assigned to A, because I told you only and only one, you can't have two elements assigned, so the assignment is unique. For A, the assigned element is always unique. A can be assigned only with one element, so that unique element is what you call as B. So we denote this by this form, and we have the other notations here. If f is a function from A to B, we say that A is the domain and B is the codomain. The element from A are called as elements from the domain, and the elements from B are called as the element from the codomain of the function. And whenever we have f of A as B, we call B as the image of A and A as the pre-image of B. These are basic notations for you to get familiarized with. The range or image of F is a set of all images of elements of A. So I put together all elements B such that B is F of A for all A belonging to A, and this is what you call as the range of F. We'll have a look at a few examples for you to get familiarized. If set A having 3 elements 4, 3 and minus 11, set B having 3 elements again 6, 9 and 11. So, and I've given you a set of ordered pairs first. We don't call it a function yet. We don't know if it's a function yet. So we'll just call it as a set of ordered pairs. Do these ordered pairs actually form a relation? It turns out that yes, they do in fact form a relation, because to form a relation you just need it to be a subset of a larger set. And what is a larger set? The Cartesian product of A and B. The Cartesian product of A and B will have 4 6, 4 9, 4 11, 3 6, 3 9, 3 11, and minus 11 6, minus 11 9 and minus 11 11 included in it. Now out of these 9 pairs we are selecting 4 6, we are selecting 3 9, we are selecting minus 11 6 and we are selecting 3 11. So these 4 pairs included will actually form a relation, that's okay. But do they also form a function? Because we learned that a function must first of all be a relation, so we have seen that it is a relation. But can we give it the extra status of a function? We can, of course, but only if it satisfies the definition. The definition says every element should be assigned to exactly one element from the codomain. Is 4 getting assigned to some element? Yes, 4 is assigned to 6. What about minus 11? Minus 11 is also assigned to 6. But you see here 3 is assigned to 2 elements. 3 goes to 9, 3 also goes to 11. The element 3 is getting assigned to 2 elements, which is not permitted, because we have seen that the image of an element should be unique. 4 should be assigned to only one element from set B, but here 3 is assigned to 2 elements from set B. Hence you see that this will not form a function. F is not a function. The relation nonetheless, that's not a problem. We never complained it about being a relation. It is in fact a relation. It stops at that. Look at this. So 1 2 3 4 going down to 1 4 9 16. So what happens if I draw this pictorial representation? You have 4 and 16, that's okay. 3 and 9, that's fine. 1 and 1, 2 and 4. Pretty much okay. Every element has an image. 1 goes to 1, 2 goes to 4, 3 goes to 9, 4 goes to 16, and they go to only one element, not more than one. So perfectly, this is in fact, we call G here. So this is actually a function. G is a function. There is no disputes about that. What happens here? Let's draw the pictorial representation again. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 on the left, 1, 4, 9 and 6 on the right. 1 goes to 1, alright. 4 goes to 6, fine. 2 goes to 4, that's also right. But, you see, the element 3 is missed out. 3 is never assigned an image from set B. Leave alone being repeated, it's not even assigned. So an ordered pair for the element 3 is absent. Now when we defined, we did say that every element should have 1 and only 1. So the minimum guarantee is that it should be 1, it can't go more than 1. 3 is not assigned to anyone, and therefore F or H as we call here H here is not a function.